Let me tell you what I love about cotton cuts and the puzzle mystery quilt. They are like, they will lead you right to the water. They can't make you drink, but they can lead you right to the water. So they make it so easy for you to finish a quilt. It's so easy. You only have to do 1 clue a month. And it takes you maybe an hour. I mean, honestly, if you just sit your booty down and do it, you're going to have that darn quilt done in 10 months. You're going to have it done. And we do it as a group, and I love that.
Hey, Dawn, I'm getting ready to start my next PMQ. I'm a little nervous.
As long as you have your swatch card and your clue, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3.
The big reveal's coming.
The big reveal's coming.
The big reveal's coming.
Big reveal is coming.
There's a big reveal coming?
Good morning, everybody. It is 9:30 a.m. on Thursday, Cotton Cuts time. It is time for our regular broadcast. Ooh, we've got some shadow coming on. Thank you, Paula, for correcting us. All right. Sorry. So good morning, everybody. It is Thursday. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we love being here every week and being able to talk to you and share all the good things that are going on. So I'm going to start off before we jump into the stuff we normally do. So it's been a week at Cotton Cuts. I started Monday and I actually started the week with an appendix. And by the time I woke up Tuesday morning, I am without an appendix. So I am 48 hours post-surgery, guys. And so I'm sharing all this because A, today's going to be a slightly shorter show than normal. B, I'm going to rely on you guys a lot. So wherever you're watching this, be it YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, I'm going to be asking you guys questions as we go to help me out. And also just to share how awesome the Cotton Cuts team is. They've been doing a phenomenal job this week. Obviously, none of us planned for me to undergo emergency surgery at 2 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And so they are making it work. And they are so singularly focused on getting you guys all the stuff that you buy from us. And they're doing an awesome job picking up all the slack when I can't be here. And so I love and appreciate them. And I hope you guys give them lots of love and appreciation this week as you're engaging with us through multiple things that we do. Okay, so we're going to start the show like we do every week. And I'm taking questions that have been submitted from you guys. So go to cottoncuts.com/live to submit a question for next week. These are handed to me. Literally, Paula hands me a piece of paper. Especially on a day like today when I literally came in and walked right here. So, all right. So first question. Thank you so much. This is from Helen Davidson from Charlotte, North Carolina. She asks, what are some quilt patterns specifically designed for pre-cuts like jelly rolls or charm packs? So Helen, this is a huge question. So there are patterns, there are books, and there are those that just make it up. And so pre-cuts are awesome. They come, they're already pre-cut for you. You can just sit and sew. You can get creative. You can sew them together, cut them apart, and shuffle them around. I love charm packs. I make a lot of charm pack quilts. So I am actually going to put this out in the audience. If anyone has links we'll allow links. We're one of those groups that'll be okay with us. If you have a link to your favorite pre-cut pattern, go ahead and toss it in the chat wherever you're at. If there's a favorite book that you like, put that in there. I'm going to suggest for books, guys, go to the library. There are so many quilt books in libraries that you can borrow and use for pre-cut. For me, I get it. I kind of lay them out and kind of see how it goes when it comes to pre-cuts. I've made now here's my caveat on pre-cut patterns is to be very careful when you read it. If it says that it is jelly roll friendly, it does not necessarily mean that you can use a jelly roll to complete that quilt. So I have made a Lone Star quilt. I've shown it, I think I showed it about a year ago or so. And the pattern said jelly roll friendly. And I sewed it for jelly roll, so a jelly roll day. And it means that you might be able to get it out with a jelly roll. So be careful when it says, if it says charm pack friendly, if it says layer cake friendly, make sure you read the entire pattern before you start sewing and don't jump into a project like I did and have to wing it as you go. But oh my gosh, Helen, the world is your oyster here. And also you don't have to follow any patterns too. There's nothing that says you have to. So thank you so much for the question, Helen. That was awesome. All right, Rachel Van Havens from Tacoma, Washington. She writes, I'm a new quilter. So many people say I need this and that. And I'm wondering if you had any starter kits you would recommend. Okay, so Rachel, this is a fantastic question. So I know it can be super overwhelming as a new quilter because everyone's like, you need this, you need this, you need this. And then $10,000 later, you have all this stuff and have no idea what to do with it. Right. And so I'm a big fan of starting simple, right? A rotary cutter, a mat, and a ruler. It doesn't even have to be a super fancy ruler, just as long as it's a straight edge, because you don't need a lot of complicated stuff. Obviously, you need a sewing machine and you need some of the like disposable stuff that might break. There's a ton of blogs out there that give you kind of a shopping list of here's the super simple basic stuff you need to get started with quilting. I'm going to put it out to the crowd for you guys. What would you say are your top 5 things if you were just starting to quilt? What 5 things would you suggest that someone acquire? What are the most important? I know me, rotary cutter, ruler, cutting mat. I think I'll say sewing machine's a given. So let's keep the sewing machine out of it. I would say thread, which is perfectly topical for what we're about to talk about. But what are the things that you think you absolutely need? Oh, seam ripper. Let's not forget that one too. That is super, super important. So go ahead and fill the comments wherever you are with what you think the top 5 most important sewing notions, gadgets, pieces of equipment, things you can't live without. I think for me, so I'm reading this comment. So Jana has a fantastic idea for a new quilter. So ask your friends, your quilting friends, if they have tools that they have outgrown. Jana, that is a fantastic way to kind of keep the circle, without waste. And so, yeah, I agree completely. If someone was to come to me and be like, hey, I'm just starting to get into this, I'm sure there's things that I could definitely offload. So, oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Yeah, and Delia B says a cutting mat, a rotary cutter, a ruler, a 1/4-inch presser foot. Yes, that is the quilting foot. As I shared a couple sessions ago, is super important, and a seam ripper. So for a new quilter, I'm gonna make sure that this isn't taken for granted. A seam ripper is also called jack. With quilters, it's called Jack the Ripper. And so if you see people talking about how they're using their jack and you try to Google this quilting tool named Jack and you get stuck, they're just talking about a seam ripper. It's just a kind of a common nickname that's given to it. All right. So let's see here. So thank you so much, Rachel and Helen. If you guys have questions you want me to talk about next week, cottoncuts.com/live, and we will ask them here and see if we can stump me and get ideas from everyone that's out there listening to us. Okay, so next we're going to talk about what's happening in the shop this week. So this week, like I said, I was out because I had the surgery, but it's a good week. It's a catch-up week for our team. So our team is getting caught up on everyone who's joined Tree of Life late. We're getting all that spring cleaning projects out of the way. We're kind of getting ready and taking a breath as we get ready to kind of really get into the end and the reveal for Carnival. And then, believe it or not, we're preparing for the next mystery. It feels like we just started Tree of Life, but we have another mystery that's coming right on the heels of it. So this is kind of our good rest week, which was timely, a good week for me to be out. So like I said, we're doing spring cleaning. So you might want to pay attention to our social media next week. We might have some really awesome, cool things coming for those of you that like sales and discounts and things that we want to have a better home than in our shop. So you didn't hear it here, but there's a sneak peek coming for something next week. So also don't forget Tree of Life. Since we're like wrapping up Tree of Life signups, it's not too late to join. We still have about 8 colorways available that still have a lot of room in them. So if you see a friend, if you have been looking at that colorway and not sure, don't delay, because our signups are going to close here in about 3 weeks, and then it'll be gone for good because we'll be on to the next thing. So for those of you that are joining us this morning, I can kind of give you a hint that the next mystery will be something Southwesty rocks, cacti themed. Yeah, we're definitely going regional for this one. And so it's not going to be, abroad, or it's not going to be things from your youth. We're definitely going more Southwest theme for the next mystery. So you've heard it here first, everyone. All right. Let's see here. So for this live, since I am obviously trying to do something a little shorter this time, our giveaway is going to be literally anyone that comments. So if you comment any of your starter tools, if you comment anything that answers the patterns question that was submitted by Helen, or if you have any comments about the thread discussion we're about to have, if you put a comment in, you're going to be entered to win a free fat quarter bundle. So we have these 10 fat quarter bundles in our shop. They're mystery bundles. They're leftover fat quarters we have at the end of projects. They're all designer quality. They're all released within the past 6 months. We're going to give one of those away to someone. We're going to give, if you comment on Facebook, on YouTube, or Instagram, we'll give away a bundle. Okay, so now we're going to continue our theme that we started last week with new quilters who might be daunted and a little overwhelmed with this quilting speak talk. And so we're going to talk a little bit longer about thread. So thread is something that I know can be super daunting and overwhelming. And you walk into a quilt shop, be it a Joann's or a local quilt shop, and you just see these giant wood cases that are filled as far as the eye can see with thread. And some of it's shiny, and some of it's cotton, and some of it's a cotton blend. And you don't know where to start. And some of it's on these big cones, and you got this big cone, and you're like, how is that going to fit on my Singer at home? Right. And so I want to share kind of my journey through thread. So when I was younger, I went to House of Fabrics, if you can believe it, it was that long ago. And there was literally only one case of thread, and it had black or white. That's it. If you wanted any of the super fancy thread, you had to go to a different store. If we were doing any sort of garments, but literally all I had was black and white. And I just grabbed it. I didn't even know any better. I didn't know that there was anything more than a black or a white option. And so, obviously things have changed since then. And my advice when you're shopping for thread is to get the best thread that you can afford and that works for your sewing machine. So let's talk about that a little bit. So there are some very, very common general purpose brands of thread that are available that are affordable. Coates and Clark, right? This is a super general purpose. You can get it at Joann's. That's actually the brand that I started sewing with because it was what was available to me and it was what I can afford. It is a fantastic general use thread. From there, it goes up. And I bought Gutermann a lot when I was a teenager because that was kind of the second brand that came into our quilt shop. And I was in love with Gutermann. I would save up those coupons and I would get it when it's on sale. But again, white or black, right? When I was quilting, it was either white or black. And Gutermann's a great thread. It works well on my sewing machine. And then I realized within the past 10 years that there is this complete new world of thread out there. That thread can be cotton, it can be degassed, it can be polyester, it can be a cotton poly blend, it can be a range of weights from 8 weight up to 100 weights. And so it's just this whole like catalog of options. And so let's talk a little bit about cotton versus polyester first. And I know we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. So the general rule and guidance, now mind you, this can always be broken because we can do our own thing, but to match the thread to the substrate that you are sewing with. So if you're sewing quilting cotton, it is recommended to use cotton-based thread. If you're sewing with a polyester, like a synthetic blend fabric, it is recommended to use a polyester thread. That way, the thread is as strong as the fabric that you are sewing. There are some that believe that a polyester thread in a quilting cotton fabric can cut it, and that as you stitch it together and wash it over time, that it actually can cut and degrade the quilting cotton. Now, I said this at the time we talked about this, but I don't know about you, but I get my quilts to be washed, loved, not to be, here in 300 years from now by the time that the cotton might degrade. So it's one of those, it really depends on what the project is going to be used for. For a baby quilt, you probably want something a little sturdier and you probably want something that's meant to be withstood some washing cycles. I am a default to cotton now. That's just kind of the world I live in. But the second piece when you're selecting your thread is you need something that's friendly with your sewing machine. And I say that because not every sewing machine likes pure cotton thread. And so if you find that you're breaking threads, if you find that you're collecting a lot of lint, just change your thread. I know that it's real easy to be like, I'm in love with fill in the name brand of thread. My friends use it, they love it, they talk about it a lot, but my machine hates it. Well, I mean, you can change one of the two in the equation. I would suggest just changing the thread and making sure that you just minimize one of those angst points. It's not worth cleaning out your machine every couple of stitches because it's accumulating lint from your thread. And so I know there's some factors like tension that play in there when you're talking about thread. Most machines these days, you don't really have to adjust the tension. They're usually pretty good out of the box. And so just play with that thread. It's also conventional wisdom. Oh, I'm sorry, Shannon. Sharon is saying also changing the needle. Yes, you can change the needle too, but oftentimes that lint is accumulating upstream of the needle and then it is being carried down into the project. And so I found that there are certain threads that I have to use a can of air to clean out of my machine. But Sharon, you're absolutely right. Needle does play a factor into that. And so there's a couple different variables to test. It's thread and needle into your machine. Okay, so where was I at? So collecting lint and thread into the machine. So there is some school of thought that says you should match your top thread to your bottom thread, to what's in your bobbin. And so I am very traditional in that way. If I am sewing with it on the top, it is also on the bottom. However, I mentioned this concept of different weights of thread. So there's 8 weight, 12 weight, 40 weight, 50 weight, 80 weight, 100 weight. Those are kind of the common weights of thread. And if you are sewing with a heavier weight on top, you can use a lighter weight in your bobbin to help it stay, because your top thread is literally just sewing across the top of your fabric and the bottom is what's catching it. And so if you have a heavier thread on top, you can use a lighter weight on the bottom. You can definitely look that up on YouTube. There's tons of conversations about using 40 weight on top and 50 weight on bottom. That's a common course correction. Or some machines can use a 12 weight on top and then use a 40 weight in the bottom. This is like a super deep conversation that's well past my skis. But if you the thought that you have to have the same in the top and the bottom is not always true, and it can be different depending on your project. So in those range of weights, I've actually sewn with that 100 weight thread. It is a super, super fine thread. So think about it opposite. The bigger the number, the smaller the thread. So that 100 weight is like angel hair. It is so, so thin. And so you might ask yourself, well, why would you use a 100 weight thread? This feels kind of silly that it's so thin and so small. And so you would use that for projects where you have a lot of seams in close proximity. I've done a tiny project where each piece of exposed fabric is maybe 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. And you want smaller thread because you don't want it to be absorbed into your seam allowance. And you definitely do not want it to consume a lot of weight in your project. And so I think that's something that, when we're thinking about how heavy a quilt is going to be, we oftentimes think the weight comes from the fabric and the batting. But guys, your thread is adding weight to your project. And so the more thread you put into your project, the heavier it will be. Okay. So I'm covering a lot of different topics here. You can tell that I'm very clearly on some pain meds right now, but I'm trying to share as much information as I possibly can with you guys about this. So it's definitely composition of the thread. Is it cotton? Is it polyester? Is it a blend? Weight of thread matters. Depending on your project, you can definitely mix and match those weights as well. There's nothing that says it has to be the same on the top and the bottom. Same with color, right? I started out, I was black and white. I use lots of different colors now, and even mix the top and the bottom. The only caveat with mixing top and bottom in your machine colors is that sometimes you can see the bobbin thread on the top. So just make sure you're cool with that. But you can definitely mix the colors in the top and the bottom. I know there was a couple other thoughts that I wanted to share on this, but what I will jump into is, one of my favorites that I use is Orfil. Orfil is an Italian-based cotton thread. We actually created a whole bunch of subscription products around Orfil because it is such a great thread. And so Orfil comes on spools like these guys. This is white. I know a lot of people use Dove, which is a light gray. That's a super common spool of thread, the color of thread for Orfil, and black. And so we have these big spools in membership. We have what we call our essentials, which is a black, white, and gray. This is the one I love because that's really kind of the threads I use the most. And then we have our super pop, which is rainbow colored. So each month is a different color. If you join the membership and you join for a year, you're going to build a whole stash full of threads that are all the different colors of the rainbow. So this month, for example, is green. And so we have kind of, it's thematic. Green is St. Patrick's Day. And so we want to make sure we stay on topic. Last month was pink because of Valentine's Day, right? It's one of these, we like to give you kind of exposure for those people who, like me, are stuck in the black and the white rut, to give you encouragement to try other colors of thread. Now, while I have this Oracle thread, I want to show you guys something. So I am, it comes off the shelf and right into my sewing machine, but a lot of companies do this here. So where you can take things off. This one doesn't have a cap, but you can sometimes store needles inside your spool of thread. And then if for some reason your thread is not spooling correctly into your machine, you can take that little knob in and move it to the other side, because there's top wound and bottom wound threads. And so if you're having problems with your thread getting stuck in your machine, moving that to the other side and then feeding it in the other way can sometimes help. Little inside tips and tricks on the Oracle spool of thread. Let me see. I want to check my notes to make sure that I'm not missing anything. There is a piece that I wanted to cover as well. So oftentimes you'll go to a garage sale, or you'll inherit thread from someone, and you bring in thread and you don't know how old it is, and you try to sew with it. And so one of the things that I learned a few years ago is that thread actually degrades over time. It is something that it is not stable. Once it's made, it does start to become weaker over time. The threads, yes, on Instagram, Paula Claben, thread does get old. And so if it's kept usually out of the light and out of extreme temperatures, it will last longer than if it's exposed to sunlight or kept out in the open and exposed to air. So thread does age, it does become more brittle. And so that's why when you've grabbed that old spool of thread that you might have had on your shelf for 10, 15 years and try and sew with it, it does tend to break. Thread does age. And so it is important to make sure that you know how long you've had your thread and that you're keeping it fresh. You're also protecting it. So I used to have like my threads out by my sewing machine and there would be natural light coming in. Not anymore. That sun can degrade it, and also just being out and exposed, it can change the way that it behaves. So make sure you're taking care of your thread. All right. So that's it. If you guys have any other questions about thread, I could talk about thread for hours. So just drop them in the comments. Definitely, if you have any tips or tricks or things you've learned about thread, what are your favorite types of thread? Do you have, oh yes, I see one French FR said she noticed that some old thread, it is terrible. Yeah, it is oftentimes not worth the fight. And so just keep that bobbin and put it on a shelf so it looks pretty, but I would struggle to use it. So that's just something that to just keep in mind. All right, so any other questions or comments, put them out there. So Jana asked me how I store my thread. So I actually have, it's kind of like a recipe boxes that are, you can't see through. And I put them in there sorted by color and have a top on it. And then I mark what's inside the box and store them on a shelf. Yes, and then I always keep the bobbins with the spool of thread, because that's always me, that I'm like, okay, is this pink this or is it this? So I like to keep the bobbins with the actual spool of thread, and they have little plastic gadgets that'll connect those two together for you, so you don't have to work too hard there. Okay, any other questions? Just put them in the comments, and my team is going to be monitoring these throughout the day today. And so just a reminder, Chroma, which is what we call our thread membership, ships on the 10th. It's actually going to ship Monday with all those lovely green threads. It's not too late to sign up. And $5 from every Chroma Super Pop membership goes to our Cotton Cuts Cares organization. Reading is fundamental. And so it's our new organization for March. They support reading in underserved schools. And we love that. We love reading. We love supporting literacy in anywhere we possibly can. And so you can help us support them. Every Chroma Super Pop, $5 from that membership will go to Reading is Fundamental. Let's see here. I'm going to take a look at my reminders, but guys, I think I got everything. So like I said, we're going to be giving away that Fat Quarter Bundle. You guys have been fantastic engaging on all these comments. This is awesome. If you watch this in a replay, make sure you can get to the live comments and see what everyone is saying. There's a ton of tips and tricks in here for new quilters. I will see if I can get Paula and the social team to kind of extract some of these and put them out in some posts throughout the week. And with that, I think that is it for me today, guys. So I will see you guys next Thursday at 9:30 Central Time. We will have more giveaways. We will have much to talk about. We will also have our spring cleaning event next week. So stay tuned for that and stock up on all of your favorite goodies. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you then. Bye now.